All right, and enough of my chatter. Now it's time for tonight's presentation. In the early days of Share Your Photos Night, the Cayuga Bird Club members would bring 5 physical slides to share, one meeting a year, and then that tradition paused sadly in the 1990s when the main contributor passed on. Meanwhile, Kevin McGowan had already been super into sharing photographs, started putting digital photos on the internet in the mid-90s, starting with scanned images. He got his first digital camera in 2000, and with his son Jay, innovated some digiscoping immediately. He began posting digiscoped bird photos on the web right away, mixing local rare birds with museum collections. In early 2004, he created some web pages for the Cayuga Bird Club, where people could share their bird photographs. Right away, it was a big hit. From there, it seemed like a natural progression, and according to the old newsletters, somewhere around 2007, Kevin decided to revitalize the Cayuga Bird Club tradition of sharing bird photographs once a year. So this now 18-year-old event has been popular ever since, and Kevin is once again glad to help make it happen again. So a warm welcome and thanks for our host tonight, Kevin McGowan. Take it away, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you for a nice introduction. Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's great to see so many people here, and I'm glad that so many people could participate. This has always been, I know, greatly anticipated meeting, and I know I've always liked doing it. It's been fun to get to see all these photos, for a long period of time, less than, a lot more than the 3 minutes that you guys get. So I'm not going to say a lot, but let me see if I can get my sound a little louder. So this year I'm going to do something that I haven't done before, which is I'm going to call all of our participants in alphabetical order by their last name. So those of you who are used to standing at the front of the line in elementary school, you know who you're going to be. And just to remember that there's no reason that you need to show a photograph. It's just something about birding that you found interesting, whether it was a rare bird or a spectacular photograph or just a fun story to tell. And everybody gets 3 minutes to tell about their 5 photographs. And with that, if I can figure out how to make all this stuff work, we're going to start with Paul Anderson. Paul, you ready to roll?
Sure, yep.
All right, let me get in and share the right thing. All right, can you see that?
Yeah, looks good.
All right, tell me when to advance. Can you tell us about the photos?
So I've been delinquent over the past few years in taking photographs of birds. I just haven't done it very much. So, but last year I did go to Spain. I spent a month in Seville, and one of the highlights of that trip was to go down to a national preserve called Doñana, which is south of Seville, a huge area. And right by the visitor center, I saw more storks than I'd ever seen in my entire life in one place. It was just unbelievable number of storks. And they were nesting down low, right by the campground, the picnic area, right by the visitor center. So I got this nice photograph of this stork, just hanging out just a few yards away from where we were having lunch. Okay, advance. On that same trip in that same area, so we went along this sort of wetland area, and we had these corn buntings that were singing all along the road. And so corn buntings are not especially unusual, fairly common over there. But this is a kind of classic corn bunting thing that you see when you're in that part of the world. They're sitting up on a post or on a wire singing loudly. So let's do the next one. And then, not a great photograph, but these were absolutely amazingly fun birds. They're red-billed choughs. So this was again in southern Spain, in a little town whose name I'm blanking on, where they have these incredibly steep cliffs, and choughs love cliffs like this. So I got up really early in the morning and went down there and and snapped a few photographs of these guys. Unfortunately, the light was not on my side, but they were extremely entertaining to watch. Let's do the next. So this one, this might be my favorite bird picture that I've taken of all time. So this was from 2 years ago. I was sitting lamenting that I hadn't taken any good bird photos, and so I decided to get up early the next morning, go to Sapsucker Woods and see what I could get. So I sat down in that little bench right next to the visitor center, and there were 2 great blue herons right there, and I kept my camera on them, and one of them dived down and picked up this catfish and flew away with it. I do have the entire sequence, which I've stitched together as a video. I'm not going to show it tonight, but if anybody wants to see it, I'd be happy to share it. And this, I think, is just it shows the power of these animals amazingly well. Next one. And so like I said, I've been delinquent in taking photographs, so I had to reach back into my archives to find this one. And so this is chipping sparrow that I found at Comstock Knoll a bunch of years ago. It occurred to me after I sent this in that I may have actually shown this at a previous Share Your Photo night, but I couldn't remember, and I figured it's worth another look because it's just such a beautiful bird. And that's all. So thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Yes, it's certainly worth another look. Thank you, Paul. Next up is Kay Burkett. If Kay, you want to? Jim?
Okay, this is a waved albatross, and it was taken in the Galapagos on Espanola Island. And I think it's a male because actually the male and the female look quite similar, but they said the males have bushy eyebrows. So I think maybe this might be a male. When we saw them, it was kind of at the end of the breeding season, and the chicks were trying to learn to fly. When they fledge, they fly out to ocean where they live for 5 years before they return to Espanola to nest themselves. Their wingspans are like 6 to 8 feet, and it was fun watching them trying to take off from the bluff where we saw them. The next one is fairly common bird in Africa. We saw this in Tanzania in November, and it's a gray-crowned crane, and they're doing their courtship dance here. We watched them kind of stamp their long legs into the grass to stir up insects to eat and gobble up. Next slide. Talking about long legs, we also saw in Tanzania the ostrich. Look at those size of those legs. And this is a female ostrich. Usually don't get to see their legs, but she happened to be crossing the road. And so I wondered, why does a female ostrich cross the road? Well, it's because there's a good looking male on the other side. So take another look at the video of that male and female at the next slide. Next.
Okay, bear with me here a second. Well, I figured this out.
No, I just want to view it. View it.
She's calling, but she's not ready.
The female's the one in front.
Oh, is she hard to get?
She's plain hard to get.
Wow.
Oh, look. Yes.
Okay. And then lastly, I'd like to show a little video that I took of a long-billed wren babbler. And this was in Bhutan in May of last year. And we could hear the bird in the underbrush, but the bird was hard to see. And finally, it just popped out right in front of us. So I took a bunch of still pictures, and then I decided I'm going to take a video. And just as I started videoing this bird, it decided to take a nap. So watch it taking a nap here. I think that's what you call a cat nap.
Well, thank you very much. That's really fun. I'm glad the video worked.
I am too.
Okay, our next presenter is Barbara Clise, and I should be doing this. Jared Dawson is on deck, so Barbara, your turn. Let me get back into this program here.
Okay, this is a northern parula, which is a warbler. I suspect it was migrating through the area in the spring migration. This was a picture done in May. And he or she, I don't know which, was very, very, very active. I was pretty lucky, I feel, to get this shot. The word that I actually thought of at the time when I took the picture was that it was being sprightly. And I gotta say, when I got the picture home and I saw it, I think sprightly is a good description of this bird. So next, please. This is a red crossbill. And prior to this shot, I'd only had one encounter with red crossbills, and it was very much at the tippy-toppy of very large evergreen trees, and I had to use a scope, and it was backlit and poorly lit, and so that was my only view of a red crossbill until this guy. This was this past year, and I took several photos showing the really unique crossbill, which of course they use to pry open seeds or pine cones and seeds. But this is actually one that flew out of the tree and landed right in front of me in the parking lot and started gritting. So I've only recently started taking photos of behaviors. I had really been focusing more on kind of profile shots, but this was my foray into capturing behaviors. So I think this gritting shot is really nice because it shows the tongue coming out there and it actually taking in the sand and go up in the tree and come back down and do it all over again. Next one. This is a limpkin. This one was spotted in the Elmira area back in October. And I think it's mostly a southern bird. And I think as far as sightings in New York go, there was this one in Elmira this past year, and the year before there was one in the Niagara Falls region. So I'm only aware of, I think, those two in the last several years. So this is kind of a rare sight this far north. This particular bird looks like a cross between a heron. It had really long legs, and an ibis. You can see the really long bill there, the down curved bill. And I did not see it eating, but I understand that during its stay while it was being observed here, it was eating snails in the area. But I was fortunate enough to see it at all. So next one, please. This is a Carolina wren. And although it might look like a beautiful, nice, warm, sunny day, this is actually January 4th on a bitter, bitter cold day, but the end of day light was really exquisite and gave me these really nice warm tones. So this wren was just on a fallen down corn stalk, And the lighting was nice on it. So I like that photo quite a bit. Next one, please. And lastly, this is a cliff, a cliff swallow, not a cave swallow, a cliff swallow. The cliff swallows have that beige forehead. And this is at a storefront in the Liverpool area in Syracuse. And this is my one and only sighting of a cliff swallow. And there were several nests in the overhang of the entrance to the store. So this bird and several others were building multiple nests in the corner. There's a wall, and the overhang. So that's an actual corner of 3 walls. And you see around the hole it's all darker color. That's because it's all wet, because it's still building its nest with its saliva and mud and so forth. And you can see the bill is all covered in mud. And at one time there were 2 of them building this one nest. So they kind of occupied the entire hole. So anyway, it was kind of interesting to see the nest being built right while I was standing there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You
Next
bet.
up is Jared Dawson with Tim Gallagher on deck. Yep.
Hi, I've unmuted. I thought you were doing that.
Nope, I
Hello?
don't. Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead, Jared.
Okay. All of these photos were taken on a single pelagic trip off the east shore of Tasmania in September of 2009. We saw a remarkable 7 species of albatross on what seemed to be a voyage of folly, as it was on a tiny fishing boat with a crew of 3 and 4 birders. There was an ominous wall of black not too far offshore, but the captain was elderly enough to instill confidence in our odds. One crewman's main job was chopping raw frozen chicken on a board in the middle of the deck. Turns out that all these birds go crazy over chicken. Normally they feed on squid and range widely around the southern oceans worldwide. This is a great winged petrel. It nests in self-excavated burrows or in rock crevices, and it feeds mostly at night. It has a healthy population and is considered stable. Next, please. This is an Indian yellow-nosed albatross. It's a small albatross that breeds on just 5 Indian Ocean sub-Antarctic islands. It raises its single chick in a large nest of mud and grass. It can dive up to 1 meter using its wings underwater. Next, please. This bruiser is a bird weighing up to 11 pounds, which with as much as a 6.5-foot wingspan. Uniquely for its order, it can walk well on land, allowing it to get to its preferred food of carrion. Aggressive, it has been known to steal food or even drown smaller albatrosses for consumption. Population is stable. Next, please. This is a good close-up look of a snowy albatross, which has the largest wingspan of any bird on Earth, from 8 to 11 feet. They can live as long as 80 years or more. It takes about 10 years to reach maturity, so juveniles can make several trips around the world before returning to land to breed. It is considered vulnerable. Next. And finally, here's a group of white-capped albatross waiting for the next frozen chicken dump from the boat. Singularly not shy in the presence of the chicken. They were known for a long time as shy albatrosses. Range is circumpolar, but breeding is limited to 3 small, whoops, that's my cue, 3 small islands off of Tasmania. And it's a rare and that can be seen inshore, which is unusual for an albatross. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jared. Okay, next up is Tim Gallagher with Ken Haas on deck.
Yes, this Cooper sock I photographed in my backyard a year or two ago. Actually, I think this bird, it was the same one for a couple of years in a row. She didn't show up again this year, but just a really beautiful bird. And, always like to check out my feeder. Next slide, please. And that's the same bird again. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the same one both years because it was a kind of a small female for an eastern bird. Next. Oh, this is a young peregrine. He was as a male this year at Taganic. I was up there on the trail, across from the nest, but the young were in the trees on this side, and this male had a big bulging crop, and he just sat there curious about me. He didn't even fly away. Next. Yeah, now I know why they used to call peregrine falcons duckhawks. Actually, I cheated on this one because this was a bird I was rehabbing. It was a bird that showed up at a rehab center in Long Island, and all its feathers were broken off and had an injured left wing and in really bad shape and juvenile plumage. And I molted her out and let her heal, and then worked on making her dive at a lure that, she'd go way up in the sky and come diving at me while I'd swing this little leather pouch with some meat on it and twitch it out of the way like a matador. And she'd go back and forth until she got really strong. But then rather than use her like a falconry bird, building up a relationship where I flush game for her and that kind of thing, I really just let her go wandering. And I had both a telemetry unit on her and a GPS unit, and I could look at her on my iPad and it'd say exactly how high she was and how far away. I mean, she went as far as 12 miles away. But and finally when she was catching stuff on her own, pigeons and things, and even one mallard, I released her. But a couple of times like this, she just felt like taking a bath, and I'd see her suddenly, she'd be up 1,700 feet, and then she'd just plummet down and not come up, and I'd go to where she was last seen, and then I'd find her in a pond like this taking a bath. Next. This is a Florida scrub jay, which I put in just for Kevin's benefit. I know he loves them, and he studied them, many years ago for a long time. And anyway, that's all I've got. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. I appreciate the scrub jay. Where was that taken? It doesn't have any bands on it, so it looks weird to me.
Oh, I know. I can't remember the exact location. I was with Bobby Harrison. We went all up and down Florida, several different, many different places. I know I've got it written down somewhere, but it was like my favorite one that I'd taken a pic, so I put it in here without, confirming where it was from.
That's okay. Just curious. As I say,
I'll find out and I'll send you an email.
With bands.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Tim.
Welcome.
Next up is Ken Haas with Meena Haribal on deck.
Hi, everybody. First, I want to say that this is probably the most fun of the CBC meetings that I attend, and I just want to say thank you, Kevin, for continuing to host this in the tradition that it is. I appreciate it. What we're looking at here is, of course, the common yellow throat. I went through my photos, and I had some topics that I wanted to cover, and I picked a number of slides here, 5, that all have vocalizations in common. So these are a cross section of some of the vocalizations, and of course, here's a yellow throat that is happy singing. This was taken on my property in May, and I think on my little 10 acres, there's probably 3 nesting pairs that I have photographed from time to time, and it's great to just walk around and hear the witchety, witchety, witchety in 3 different areas. Next slide. And this guy is singing as well. I'm pretty sure it's a guy anyway. I'm looking at the chestnut stripes. This one has a firm grip on that twig as it belts out its song. I have 1, sometimes 2 pair of chestnut-sided warblers on my property that both fairly close to each other, I think. But this was shot Yeah, this still was shot on my property. Next slide, please. Here's a different
That's
kind
not
of
on your property.
vocalization. What's that?
That's not on your property.
No, that is not. I have a pond, but it's not that big. This is up in Oswego. As you can see, vocalizations might be a difference of opinion between a pair of birds. Maybe the rest of the birds feel that one guy is facing the wrong way. And in this photo, I like the gull in the just left of center up top. I feel like he's looking at the camera saying, "Do you believe these guys?" Next slide. And sometimes the discussions between birds will get kind of heated. An argument will ensue, and that happens pretty often when there's a food that they're trying to share. It's funny because there's plenty of food for everybody, but maybe they have to bicker over a particular berry. This was shot on my property this past November, in fact. That's one of the hawthorn trees on my place, which still has some berries, but they're all red and don't host as many birds anymore. And sometimes heated arguments get even escalated a little higher. Next slide, please. Where you find one of your fellow species just yelling in your face to get off his favorite perch. This was photographed at Montezuma on Wildlife Drive just after the bird blind on the left. There's a little marshy area in there, and there's one of these posts that in spring, April, I think, there's a lot of different tree swallows up there, and they seem to take turns on it, but there's always an argument, some kind of yelling that ensues. And I like this photo because you could just see the expression on that tree swallow's face and the position of the legs and the wings. It looks pretty forceful. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Next up is Meena Haribal with Bob McGuire on deck.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I went to Iceland. Actually, I went to Iceland for some other reason. I was interested in looking at Northern Lights. But one day I got a free time. So that's when I did most of the birding. And that in the morning, I was supposed to have gone on a pelagic trip. Not exactly pelagic, but a whale watching trip. But it got canceled because of the rough weather. But on the way, there was a pond and it was a beautiful thing. So I came back to the pond and spent most of my time there. But this particular bird is northern fulmar. And northern fulmars nest all along the cliffs of the Iceland. And some of them bicker around with each other at the nesting colony. And I was at one of the waterfalls where these were flying around with each other and just going back to the nesting area. And also there was a place called, I think, I can't pronounce it. And in that area, there was a cliff where the edge of the cliff went all the way to the sea. And then there was a turn. So there were thousands of them just going round and round in that area. And also I saw some other petrels and things like that there. Next. There were quite a few whooper swans, and it was fun to watch whooper swan feeding. They'll put the head inside, and then when they come up with the algae like this, but it's hard for them to pick the thing, so they will shake their head so vigorously. Sometimes it was really funny, like the way water would splash around. I have some slides, but I didn't like those I like this one better, so I use this one. Thank you. Next. And there were quite a few Eurasian visions, and this one was the most handsomest. He had some extra colors of white, and he was splashing around wherever there was some food available, and you could see him splashing water and all. Next. In Iceland, you would expect a lot of Iceland girls, but no, I didn't find any Iceland girls because it was September still, and but there were lots of black-headed girls, and these black-headed girls, they're so dainty and beautiful. They spin around like feller-ups when they're looking for food, and this was one of the handsome guy who was hanging around right in front of me very often. Next. This is another gull, which is very common in Europe. And this is a lesser black-headed gull. And these breed in Iceland. And Iceland species has much darker wing pattern compared to what we see here. It's almost like as good as great black-backed gull. Next, I think this is it.
I think that's it. Isn't
Yeah.
it?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Bob McGuire with Kevin Murphy on deck.
Thank you, Kevin. So I've put together a collection of winter birds. And the first one is a gray morph eastern screech owl that appeared last year during the Christmas bird count right along the rail trail in Varna. That's when I took this shot. It turns out the same bird was still there this year's Christmas count. Same location, same pose, easy to find, but very difficult to pick it out from the gray bark in the dying or dead cherry tree. Next. It's a purple sandpiper. Shot was taken in Sodus Bay about a few months ago, back before Christmas. Purple sandpiper is a bird that breeds in the high Arctic and winters down on the Atlantic coast. So it passes through here during migration. And in fact, some of them stay around. Sodus, Fairhaven, this was going to be one of the targets of last weekend's field trip, hopefully in a couple of weeks. And there is a purple sandpiper still reported there. A couple of weeks, I hope we'll be able to see one. Next. One of my favorite ducks is duck. And not only do I like it for the plumage, but also for the incredible calls that they make. It's absolutely unforgettable. And I love hearing them. I love recording them. I love watching them. Next. And this bird, I think, as everybody recognizes, is a hooded merganser taken Montezuma sometime in the late fall. Standing up here stretching, but look at how proud that bird is, showing off that gorgeous white crest. Next. And last slide, our pair of male harlequin ducks taken last winter down at Barnegat Light in New Jersey. Again, these birds breed further north from here, but they winter on both coasts, Atlantic and Pacific coast. And one of the things that I love about them is that cool pattern. Again, look at how handsome these two guys are. And that's it. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Beautiful stuff. Okay, next up is Kevin Murphy with Sandy Podulka on deck. Kevin, tell us about your trip.
Sure. So I have a collection of photos from a trip I made to Africa last summer. Before I go any further, Kevin, thanks for doing this. And thank you to everyone else for sharing all your photos. It's fun to see what everyone's up to. So this first photograph was taken in Cape Town, South Africa at the Kirstenbach Botanical Gardens. If you ever have the chance, the gardens are just amazing themselves. This is a southern double-collared sunbird, which is comparable to our hummingbirds. And I like this photo because it shows both the bird and it shows the vegetation. I didn't know this before I went there, but the Western Cape has one of the 6 world's biomes, and it has very interesting and beautiful vegetation. Next photo. So these are African penguins. I didn't know until I was headed to Africa that I'd actually be able to see and find penguins in Africa. This was located at a colony in a place called Boulders Beach, which is located south of Cape Town. They are considered endangered, but the most interesting thing I found today when I was checking, if you put in African penguin and do a Google search, they must be every zoo in the US that has penguins must have African penguins, because all you get are the names of zoos. I thought that was pretty interesting. Next photo. So this is a bad photo of a good bird. From South Africa, we went to Zimbabwe. And what you've got in the middle of that photograph, if you can see the red, that is a southern ground hornbill, which is considered vulnerable. It's a very large bird. We saw 6 of them. And when they saw us, they scurried off. They can be as tall as almost 4.5 feet tall. And the males can weigh up to about 13.5 pounds. And I would say this bird was probably close to both of those. It was very large as it headed off away from us. Next photo. This is a lilac-breasted roller. And I was fortunate enough to get a series. I have the bird on that stump that's sticking up there, and then a series of photos of it flying away. And this was the one that I sort of liked the best, that really demonstrates the colors that you get to see. And the next photo. So this bird has the best story of our trip. Earlier in the day, so we were in Zimbabwe, and if you tell your guides when you're on safari in Zimbabwe that you're interested in birds, everyone I met, they were incredibly good birders. They were finding birds for me everywhere. Earlier in the day, I had asked the guide, are there any owls around? I haven't seen any owls. And about 30 seconds after that, he spotted a pearl-spotted owlet. So I saw that bird earlier in the day. And later that day, we were out eating dinner. And we were at a table outside. I was sitting outside and looked up out of the corner of my eye. The bird that you see in this photo flew over the dinner table. I thought it was going to land at the seat at the head of the table. It was about 1 foot over my head until it went around and landed on the remains of this tree. And then someone had some sort of a light, because all I had was my phone with me. But this is a Burroughs giant eagle owl. You can't really tell in this photograph, but one of the things that's very interesting about it is that it has pink eyelids. If you get to see it close. Its wingspan is up to about 6.5 feet. And shortly after I got this photograph, it turned and took off. And it was amazing how fast and how quiet it was. It's a great time, great trip, lots of good birds. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sandy Podulka's up and Tone Schat on deck.
Thanks, everyone. I'm really enjoying the photos. Uh-oh, I don't really want to have the caption, but there it is. Anyway, last January, my husband and I went to the central Amazon, and we ended up at a floating lodge in the Mamirawa Reserve. This is about 300 miles west of Manaus. And we went in the rainy season, which wasn't the smartest. So every day in the middle of the day, there was a very heavy rain. And I was standing out on the deck watching the rain, and lots of schools of small fish were surfacing and jumping out of the water, and all kinds of birds were diving in and chasing them. And of course, to the Amazon, I show an osprey, but this osprey managed to catch 3 fish in one dive. And I didn't even notice it until I came home and looked at the picture, but he's got at least 3, maybe 4 fish in his grasp. So I thought that was kind of cool. Next, switching gears, in November, we drove down to Central Florida, where I'd actually never been, and went a bunch of places birding. And I fell in love with Fort DeSoto Park, which is near Orlando, and near Tampa. And it's got beautiful beach, and it's got also mud flats at low tide, just loaded with terns and gulls and waders and shorebirds and pelicans and anything. And the birds aren't particularly shy. But we had a lot of clouds and rain on our trip. And this one evening, just a little before sunset, the sun peeked out between the clouds, and it like lit all the birds up, and everything started glowing. And that's right when my SD card ran out, and I was really upset. And so after a little bit of cursing, I switched cards, and I was able to get some photos. And this is not crop. I mean, I was backing up as this is a reddish egret, and it was fishing, and it was just right in front of me. Next one. This is another shot of a reddish egret, a different bird. I think when it was cloudy. They really are not shy. And that glare is not for me. He's really intensely focusing on fish. Okay, and next. One of my favorite new places to photograph and watch birds is Barnegat Lighthouse State Park that Bob McGuire mentioned, which is on a barrier island about an hour north of Brigantine on the coast of New Jersey. And in winter and early spring, you can see some cool birds up close. The harlequin ducks that Bob showed a picture of, and scoters and various loons like this red-throated loon and purple sandpipers, Dunlin. It's just a great place to photograph. And I went when I went there with Bob McGuire and John Greenlee in late March, and we just got really lucky. We happened to hit it on a day when I guess the winds were just right, and northern gannets were migrating by the thousands. They were just, I'd hardly ever seen them as more than a dot before. And the winds were just right, and they were going by, and then they started coming right over our heads. We were way out on a jetty, and they were going by right overhead, and then they all started diving into the water. There must have been a big fish school, and they were diving. It was beyond the next jetty over, so it was pretty far away. But I wanted to share, the next thing is a video of these guys diving. It's probably one of the most amazing birding moments I've ever had, was watching these guys dive in the water. I tried to yell to Bob, and I couldn't even get the words out to say what was going on. So I just started yelling. So if Kevin can play the video. That's it. Thanks, Kevin.
That's an amazing spectacle. I've been fortunate to see that, and Boobie's doing that once or twice, so it's just amazing. No, you're supposed to actually disappear. There we go. All right. So next up is Tone Schat with Tom Shepard, Waiting in the Wings.
Hello. So we joined a tour to Panama this fall, and we were planning to go to the Daring Camp, to the Canopy Camp, But unfortunately, we were blocked by demonstrations against a copper mine run by a Canadian company. And so we had to switch the program, and we went to the house of an American couple. They had over 20 hummingbird feeders.
Wow.
So we had a lot of fun there, and all 5 photos were taken at that place. Dit is een white-necked Jacobin in flight, and I had a lot of fun trying to photograph hummingbirds in flight. Next, please. And dit is een long-billed hermit, also fairly common in that area. Next, please. And here we have a violet-crowned wood nymph, one of my favorite hummingbirds, a beautiful one with a forked tail. And now we go out of the hummingbirds into the honey creepers. Next. It's a green honey creeper. Doesn't look really that green, but it is green. Also at the same place. Next and last. And this is the red-legged honey creeper. There is a similar bird that is the blue honey creeper, but it has yellow legs. The outcome of the demonstrations was that the copper mine will be closed, and the copper mine is an environmental sensitive area next to Costa Rica. So the demonstrations worked, and that was the only thing that made us happy that we missed the Darien Gap. Thanks, Kevin, for doing this.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Okay, Tom Shepard is up, and Tracy McLellan is on deck.
Okay, hi everyone. During COVID, like most of us, we were kind of holed up for a couple of years. So we were looking for a new place to bird this year, or this past year. And during that time, we discovered the New River Birding and Nature Festival in West Virginia. And not having been there before, we would normally switch between Cape May, New Jersey and McGee Marsh in Ohio. And this trip to West Virginia is just about the same distance as it would have been to go either of these two. The festival that they run basically supports a local education fund. And there's a number of dedicated individuals that make this work. When we first got there, the weather was terrible. The first 4 days, it was wet and cold and windy, and we thought it was going to be a bust. But on the 4th day, the sun came out, and we went to I don't know if it was a strip mine that had been reclaimed or a place that had been clear cut, and same kind of thing. But it was all brush and everything. And we noticed some movement in the brush, and lo and behold, out came this prairie warbler. And you could barely see him to begin with, but the longer we stayed, he just became more and more curious about us and moved into a beautiful position. This particular photograph, again, the lighting was perfect, but you can see a number of the identifying marks, both the face, the breast, and the tail. Next, please. Next. Okay, in this same area, it was just full of different kinds of warblers. This one, of course, is a chestnut-sided warbler, but you can clearly see the chestnut bar on the breast. Next, please. Okay, this is a northern parula, or as they call him down there, a parula. Again, it's semantics, but whatever. This was at, let's see, Babcock State Park. Another good warbler area, but different warblers from what we saw in the other places. I don't have the photograph here, but also the Blackburnian warblers were in the same area. And with the forested background, they stood out beautifully. Next, please. This one was an incredibly difficult bird to photograph. This is a Swainson's warbler. As we were standing by the side of the road, peering into the brush, this brown bird came within about a foot of our knees and dove into the brush. And when we finally spotted him, it was extremely difficult to focus on him because of all the brush in front of us. But I did pull off a few good shots. And this was a warbler I had not seen before, so it was a fun experience for us. Next, please. So just to show you that you don't have to go far from home to see warblers, this particular blue-winged warbler was right outside our window. And we rarely have warblers come to our feeder area, but I think he was just curious about all of the other birds that were around the feeder at the time. So this was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity at our place. And again, you don't have to go far from home to get a good photograph. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate you doing this.
Well, thank you, Tom. This is great. Okay, the next to last talk is by Tracy McLellan, who unfortunately, when we had to change the meeting date, she couldn't make it. She's in Ethiopia somewhere, so don't feel bad about her, but she's off on another trip. But so she sent in these photographs, and I started looking. I looked at this first one, and it's like, oh, I just got really excited about some of the stuff, and I couldn't help but tell her, write to her about some of the birds, and she said that I was welcome to actually present her slides if I wanted to, and to mention some of the interesting things I have about this. She went to Argentina. I could tell from the slides that she was somewhere, Argentina or Chile, a place I've never been. But this just really brought out the geek side of me. You guys know me. I am an enthusiastic bird person at a whole bunch of different levels. And this particular bird, I didn't know what it was exactly, but I knew the genus. That it's just the genus popped up because it's Oop-Oop-Certhia. This is the buff-breasted earth creeper. It's in the Furnariidae family. And Oop-Oop-Certhia is just, it just really hits me because it's part of, you see the nice curved bill, it reminds you of a hoopoe, which has the best scientific name in the world, Oop-Oopa epops. And so the Oop-Oopa came from there, and then Certhia is like a brown creeper. That's a genus name for Certhia. And so this is just like, just really struck me. And then I started looking at the other birds as I was going through her slides, and this is a yellow striped brush finch, and I thought, oh, yeah, I've never been here, but I got one. I know I one genus of these birds. Maybe I can get a couple of other ones too. Let me see what I can guess, and I guess this one as Atelopedes for God knows why. That just, again, I have all these little factoids in my brain about birds that just pop up now and then. And as I was looking up the brush finches, I thought I was wrong, but as it turns out I was right. Just sheer luck, I guess. And then the next one was easy because this is the Rufus ornero. This is the bird that stands for the Furnariidae, the big family of what are known as oven birds down there. And this is Furnariia, or Furnarius, which is the type genus for the family. And this is their very famous oven, Dutch oven type nest that they build, these huge mounds of mud that they put on they put these on fence posts and things like that, telephone poles. And so that one's a classic bird of Argentina. And then this one, I had no idea what it was. I knew it was a tit tyrant, but that was all I could do. And I'd never heard the genus name before, and I've never tried to say it in public before. Anirides. But I gave myself partial credit for knowing it was a tit tyrant, which is in the flycatcher family. And then the last one was just a black siskin, and I knew that's the same genus as the siskins and goldfinches. We have spinus. So that was my take on her things. But what she was going to talk about is, notice that this one is, those of you doing atlas work, what would you count this as? What is that? Gathering nest material, probable breeder, right? And if we go back, recent fledgling, confirmed breeding. At a nest, probable breeder, feeding young, confirmed breeding, and carrying food, also confirmed breeding. So that was what she was partially doing down there, was atlasing and putting in these atlas breeding codes anyway. So I want to thank her for letting us look at her photos. And then I come to my segment. And those of you who know me and have been around for any of the 18 years that I've been doing this know that I have always shamelessly exploited my power of being in charge, and that I have never shown fewer than 5 photographs. And I always, make a story out of it. Anyway, that's just what gives me some pleasure about doing all this and seeing all these wonderful photographs and getting to be in charge. So for a lot of people, we had a phenomenon this fall. The white pines had a massive cone crop, and a lot of people have noticed the exploitation of these cones by red-winged blackbirds, these flocks of red-winged blackbirds. I mean, I saw these, first time I saw this, it's like I saw all these birds going into the top of a tree, and it's like, crossbills, crossbills. No, it wasn't crossbills. It was red-winged blackbirds. But the cool thing about this is, I wanted to show you, these aren't great pictures, but I wanted to show you what the thing that's so cool about red-winged blackbirds eating these pine cone seeds is that if you notice, if you look here, the male this is a male red-winged blackbird, has his bill closed and stuck it into under the scale of one of the on the pine cone, and then he opens his bill, prying open the scale, and then he gets his reward. And I thought this was really cool. You know how crossbills have the crossbills that they use to lever open the scales to get underneath the scales to get these seeds. Well, blackbirds are one of very few families of birds that actually consistently use what we call a prizing motion, where they stick their bill into something and then open it up to pry that open. It takes different muscles than most birds use for foraging like this. Most birds, like cardinals, they're all about crunching down, but blackbirds, starlings, and crows and jays actually use this prizing motion all the time to peer under things. And I just thought this was so cool that it's like, yeah, totally logical that a red-winged blackbird could take advantage of this by having their specialized bill opening foraging motion. And my Siri was trying to tell me something, but I don't know. She thought I asked a question there, but that wasn't a question. But this is the end, and I want to thank everybody who's participated. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. As several of our people have already said, this is one of many of our favorite scenes of the year. So thank you all.
Thanks, Kevin.